Hello, everyone. I'm Anastasia. I'm working at CAICO. CAICO is a it's a leading crypto market data provider. So we provide data on centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges. And today, I wanted to present you a bit what I'm doing at CAICO. So at CAICO, I'm a product manager on DeFi market data. And so it's been actually 3 years that I'm working there. And through this experience, I've discovered the importance of DeFi data, and more specifically DEX's data, to understand market events and potentially to analyze and identify signals of potentially bad market events that happened in the past and that actually could happen in the future. So my job consists of studying and analyzing and reverse engineering many DeFi protocols in order to build user-friendly data products. And so the data that we're going to look at today, it's DEX's data. And I'll go through a data-driven analysis of USD's DPEG, and so the Terra collapse, to actually show you how, by harnessing DeFi data, and specifically what we have been building for a year now at CAICO, we actually can find many interesting things. So I'm sure all of you are aware of what happened recently on Terra. And by reading a lot about this in the past weeks, and actually months for now, I successfully I tried to remake the story from A to Z on what happened on the markets and how the markets had a key role on USD DPEG. So everything began with Terraform Labs withdrawing $150 million of USD from the key the main curve pool, which was a pool made of UST and 3 CRV being a token representing another pool, the 3 pool, and inside of 3 CRV, we have USDT, USDC, and DAI. After this, we, as expected, the price of UST with respect to 3 CRV went above 1, since UST is supposed to be equal to $1. But a very smart trader bridged 85 million USD from Terra to Ethereum and then swapped those USD to take back USDC, which created a snowball effect and a massive sell-off with other traders doing the exact same, like selling many USD on the same pool, and which caused the increase of USD reserves in this specific pool and the beginning of the drop of USD's price. All of those events happened between the 7th and the 8th of May. On the 9th and the 10th, we observed a huge decrease in liquidity on DEXs, what I've called here the liquidity crisis on DEXs. And so since there was no more liquidity on DEXs, what happened is that other traders that actually heard about what was happening on UST and saw the small DPEG and were trading on centralized exchanges actually sold UST on centralized exchanges. And so the phenomenon migrated from decentralized to centralized exchanges, and so kind of the same thing happened, but way later. Once we had a liquidity crisis on centralized exchanges, the last solution for holders of UST was to switch their UST and get back Luna, benefiting from the redeem mechanism. So what they could do directly on Terra was to redeem $1 of Luna by burning 1 UST, whatever its price. But this was only if Luna's market cap was above UST's market cap. However, only the first comers the first people who actually did that could benefit from this because very, very fast Luna's supply increased. And since there are more and more Luna in the markets, one Luna was worth less, and so Luna's price decreased, which in the end made Luna's market cap being lower than UST's market cap, and so game over in the end. It was the Terra collapse. So this was a story, and by looking at the data that we have built at CAICO, especially on the DEXs part, since in my team we have built those specific data sets. I wanted to see if there was something in the data very early before the 18th of May, where the price really dropped, that we could have used to really understand and anticipate what was going to happen. And actually there was. The first thing that I discovered was by looking at the very generic data on the liquidity pools level, so on the curve liquidity pool level. So I've checked the token reserves of the UST3 CRV pool. And so on the one side, in orange, we have UST, and on blue, we have the other stablecoins. And normally, for the price to be 1, it has to be a balanced pool. However, we can see that just on May 7, May 8, the reserves begin to be imbalanced across those two tokens, which means that something is happening on the price, which means that UST is worth less and less than $1. And this, well, I'll show you after that it was actually because of the massive sell-off that was happening. But this continued till the point where UST was representing, in this specific pool of curve, was representing more than 90% of the reserves. One last thing about this chart, reserves are extremely important on DEXs when we analyze the markets, because DEXs have a different microstructure than centralized exchanges. This microstructure is called AMMs, automated market makers. And on AMMs, token reserves have a direct impact on the price. And after looking at very aggregated level data on the pools level, I have decided to look at more granular data. So to check swaps, so swap by swap, what happened on this pool and on other DEX pools, on other DEXs like Uniswap P3, but also liquidity events, that is the activity of liquidity providers. And that's where I actually noticed that this thing, the increase in the reserves of UST inside the pool on curve, was actually due to a massive sell-off of UST with respect to USDC. And in total, I've computed the sum on May 9, which was the all-time high in volume on sell volume of UST. We observed more than 20 million UST that have been sold only on this curve pool and only with respect to USDC, which means that there are actually more than those sales. Same thing for liquidity events. When we look at more granular data, we can actually determine also what is happening on the reserves. If we go back to the first chart, we see that there is a huge decrease in liquidity in this pool on May 14th, and this totally corresponds to May 13th, actually. This totally corresponds to a burn event. A burn is a liquidity provider withdrawing liquidity from a curve pool, and we see that the amount actually totally corresponds to to the decrease in liquidity in the pool. And well, the next question I asked myself was, okay, if there is such such an event happening on Curve and on other dexes, since we saw that the same thing was happening on Uniswap E3. This actually has an impact on the price. And you all know that price of UST decreased tremendously, even on since May 10. And I asked myself, are there any huge price discrepancies between decentralized exchanges and centralized exchanges on the price? And actually, I've noticed that not really. So in dark blue, we see the average price of USD with respect to stablecoin pairs on centralized exchanges, and the other lines on pink and blue are Curve and Uniswap V3. And actually, we see that the price kind of corresponds. However, by looking at the volumes, I have discovered another story. I have discovered that there was really information asymmetry between traders on DEXs and traders on centralized exchanges. Because when we look on the left at the total volume traded daily on UST pools on Curve and Uniswap, we see that there is a peak on May 9, just before the huge drop of the price. However, when we look at the same chart, but on centralized exchanges, and I've chosen here Kraken and KuCoin, we see that this peak only happens after, which means that the information gets afterwards to traders who trade on centralized exchanges. And actually, when we look at the average trade size on centralized exchanges, we see that it's way lower than the one on decentralized exchanges. On centralized exchanges, the average trade size is way below $100,000, while on decentralized exchanges, it's above $1 million a trade, which means that either centralized exchanges trader, most of them are retailers or retail traders or less experienced traders, and that on DEXs we have mainly whales and maybe institutionals. So as I told you, this in the beginning, in the storyline, everything began on decentralized exchanges, but this had an impact on centralized exchanges. And I really like this chart that have been made by CAICO's research team, which shows that on May 11th, we had the buy side of Binance order book on UST, USDT that was totally empty. And there was also a tweet which was pretty fun about that. And this reminded me of actually a piece that I've read, a play that I've read like 10 years ago. It's a French play about, it's actually the story of Vladimir and Estragon waiting for Godot, who actually never comes. And like we can do a parallel between Godot and UST buyers on May 11th on centralized exchanges, and Vladimir and Estragon, who are actually the UST sellers on May 11th. To actually conclude about this data analysis, we had actually days to identify what happened on UST, to identify what happened and what caused in the markets UST's depeg. We had more than 4 days. Just by looking at the trades, like the second chart here, just by looking at the massive sell-off, we could have anticipated this, and even centralized exchanges traders could have traded faster 4 days before. So what we can say is that on-chain, on on-chain markets, latency is not really a thing. What really matters is just having access to the data, just having the information being shared, just having market efficiency across all the markets of crypto, whether they're centralized or decentralized, since decentralized exchanges markets are becoming more and more important when it comes to volume or just when it comes to some tokens, since some tokens are only traded on decentralized exchanges. And actually, I remember when I was actually looking at those charts and realized that signals were there in the data and that there was a huge information asymmetry on those markets. I remember like my studies in finance and this theory that I've studied back then. It was like a theory. It's a quantitative model which shows the importance of information asymmetry on traditional financial markets and measures the risk that it can represent. And actually, I concluded that not having access to decentralized exchanges data, which actually ensures having the right information to monitor, to analyze those markets, is taking a considerable risk. Well, at CAICO, we have built the tools, the toolkit to avoid such predictable market events and avoid taking unconsidered risk. And so those tools are tools that are standardized. So we provide data which is available for centralized exchanges, for decentralized exchanges through APIs, SDKs. So it's through traditional and reliable tools and infrastructure that we build by ourselves. We take, when it comes to decentralized exchanges data, we take it directly on Ethereum and on other blockchains. We provide this data real time in order to enable big traders and big investors as institutions and enterprises to monitor and analyze in real time this data. And so, yeah, to anticipate those market events that can be very, very easily anticipated. Thank you very much. Any questions? All right. Then enjoy the rest of the day and the amazing side events tonight.
Thank you very much.